Hey there, this is Peter Price on the campus of Huntington University, and you're listening to Rooted. Make sure you subscribe to us on SoundCloud and iTunes, and you can catch us every Thursday evening at 7 on 105.5 WQHU. And as always, you can stream Forrester Radio anytime, anywhere on forresterradio.com or through the TuneIn app. Today I'm sitting down with Dr. Heller, and I hear that you go to the prisons a lot of times to go work with prisoners and stuff like that. What kind of stuff do you do there, and how'd you get involved in it?
I got involved in 2007, all right? In 2005 or 6, I saw a movie about Shakespeare in prison, and I said, I am going to go see this. And this was in Kentucky. And I took a group of students with me down in Kentucky, and for several years, I would go every year, twice a year, to visit the inmates in Kentucky as they would be working on Shakespeare, and then I would go back to watch them do their play. And then around 2011, I would go down for a week at a time and visit the prison in Kentucky every day of the week and work with them on whatever play they were doing next. I would put on my professor hat and go and teach this play for 5 days. And then in 2013, I asked the men in Kentucky, did they think I could do what they are doing, if I could lead a group doing Shakespeare in prison? And they thought that I could. And I contacted the officials at Indiana's Pendleton Correctional Facility, and they said, let's give it a try. So in October 2013, we began Shakespeare at Pendleton, which is what I call the program that I lead. And we have so far done 2 plays, and we're working on a 3rd.
So you do plays with the prisoners.
We do.
So what kind of plays do you do? Like Shakespeare plays? Just whatever looks fun?
So far, they have all been Shakespeare. We did the first performance in a prison of a play that Shakespeare wrote called Coriolanus. There's a movie of Coriolanus with Ralph Fiennes as the character. A very angry character. Everything that happens sets him off. He's a warrior. He's also a mama's boy to a degree. And he just cannot contain his anger. And some of his enemies know this, so they always sort of poke at him, trying to get him provoked and then starting a real problem. And we worked with that play for about 18 months and did the first prison production ever of that play. We followed that with scenes from 2 of Shakespeare's comedies, Much Ado About Nothing and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Right now, this group of men, they really don't want to perform women roles, so I found all male role scenes in these plays, and we did the all male scenes in these plays, which are really rather funny anyway. So we did a show of comedies, and now we're just working on our 3rd play.
So with that first play you were talking about, with the very angry guy.
Yes.
To me, like from my perspective, I would think like a lot of prisoners would be angry because they're in prison. What was it like working with that play and having someone play this role? What was it like for them, for you to see this?
Our lead actor for that play had along the way said that he actually needed anger management help, and thought that the play itself was anger management training for him. At one point, he became not angry at us or angry at the program, but angry at something that had occurred within the prison. And he really didn't know what to do with that. And while we were rehearsing the play, he realized that he was, in fact, very similar to the character he was performing. So it helped him to sort of work through his feelings about that anger and see the destructiveness of it. That man, by the way, is out of prison now. I'm not going to say more about that. I need to respect his privacy about that. But I think it's helped him to be ready to be out of prison. So that's part of the intentions.
So, also along with that, what was it like for you to see this and hear about this? you hearing that I'll say one of your students who was having problems with this could let out through a character. What was it like for you as the one teaching him?
I'd seen that before, even working with the men in Kentucky. A few years ago, they did Romeo and Juliet, and the man there that played Juliet had been a white supremacist. And he said to the other men in the group that he chose to play Juliet because he wanted a role that would teach him about love. And so he played Juliet, and he was the ugliest man ever to play Juliet. There has never been an uglier Juliet on a stage. But it was beautiful in its own way to see this man be able to work with those that he used to hate and learn how to work towards a common goal with the men there.
So with all these people you work with, I remember last year hearing about you like early 2016 or late 2016 and early 2017, you working with one of the prisoners for getting a petition for something. I forget all the details.
Details. Well, he was not someone I knew in the prison. He had actually been out for almost 10 years already, out of prison. He had been arrested. His name was Keith Cooper. And I read about him actually in the newspaper. I had not met him, but I read about him in the newspaper, heard about his story, and it just really affected me partly because of other things that I've worked on in the prisons and even teaching some of the literature that I teach. So he had been wrongly accused and had spent 9 years, almost 10 years in prison for an armed robbery. And circumstances were such that he made an agreement to get out of prison, but his agreement included that he could not appeal his conviction. So the only way he could clear his conviction as to declare himself to be represented as an innocent man is to get a governor's pardon. He is an innocent man. He did not do this armed robbery. We know that for a number of reasons. DNA evidence, eyewitness testimony, any number of things say that this man, Keith, did not do this armed robbery. But he couldn't defend himself because of the deal he made to get out of prison. So he needed a governor's pardon. And I put on the web a petition that the governor would pardon him. That at the time was Mike Pence, now the vice president. And unfortunately, Mike Pence never did pardon this man, but we kept the petition going after the election, and eventually we persuaded Governor Holcomb to pardon Keith. So he got his pardon a year ago in February, and now he can say that he has not been, he is not a convict on the charge of armed robbery. He can say that honestly, and it was always true. He had never been an armed robber, but it's legal. He can say it legally now. He has not been that. And he lives in the Chicago area, and he's primarily now enjoying taking care of his grandkids. And by the way, he's also suing Elkhart County, so we'll see how that works out.
Did you ever get to meet Keith?
I did. We met 3 times, and I do keep in touch with him, and his wife. I keep in touch with them, and it affected him. It was a trial. It was an ordeal to go through going to prison and being regarded as a convict for so many years. But he's doing okay, I believe.
So with all the stuff that you do with people in prisons, with that story about Keith, what has this stuff impacted you as a person? Have you seen with all this stuff? Seeing with the people you work with, does it ever like just hit home for you, or just you feel something from them?
It does. There are days when I don't know how many people that, either yourself or those who will listen to this, I don't know how many people that this will go to will have ever visited or been inside of a prison, but it can be very grim and depressing. But when you are there and you're working on something that teaches all of us something about our lives, about anger, or in the comedies about funny things, humor, stupid little things that characters say, or as we're working on a play right now, losing everything that you hold near and dear. All of these things are experiences that we have in common. I'm not a resident at Pendleton, but I realize and recognize as I work with the men how much we have in common. Sometimes even what little it takes to be where they are. So it's interesting to sort of think through what their humanity is, and I try to respect that in my working with them to not think, well, I'll even go further than that. I don't ask them why they're there. They tell me if they want me to know. So I know that there are some that I work with who had committed murder or sex crime, but I don't, they, if I know this, it's because they told me. Otherwise, our interactions are in the present. This is who they are now, and this is who I am, and let's see what we can show of each other in our lives.
So, if this is like I'll say a ministry or just a thing people want to get
hmm
into, is there ways for other people to do similar stuff to what you're doing, or?
It's not easy. For one thing, Pendleton's 70 miles from here, so students have asked me if they can get involved in it, and I say it takes a lot of your time. But I would suggest if somebody wants to try to do something is to look far more locally. The Huntington County Jail probably has um, volunteer opportunities. Tutoring could be a possibility there. Maybe a book group or a book club. Uh, Working maybe with a church that already visits the county jail. I don't know of those because I don't work personally with the county jail. I would consider it if I weren't already doing prison work elsewhere. But it is something that students can do. They just have to find and pursue those opportunities. And later on, see what they can do after they graduate. Right now, I have an associate. This was a young woman who had been a student actually at Taylor University, and she had done theater there, and she wants to work in this kind of setting, and she has been very good with showing the men how to act, which is something I don't really know. We figure it out along the way, but she has the skills, so she's been able to do that. Prison volunteer work takes time, and it may not be time that's easy for students to have, but it may be available after they graduate and find their work schedules and then find a block of time when they can go and volunteer. While I'm thinking about it, though, there were two students a few years ago who spent their day term working at the prison. There were. They're not here anymore. They graduated. They were two social work majors, but they had taken a field trip that I do every year with the social work majors, and then decided they wanted to be involved in that for a few weeks.
So, do you see yourself doing this type of work for a long time to come, or?
Well, I've already done it for a long time in some ways, with starting in Kentucky and to now. It's 10 years at this point. But it's what I do. So I think I would continue to do it, uh, maybe even after I retire, which is not soon, but anyway. Yeah, I enjoy working on it, and as much as I'm able to. I also can do other kinds of programs. If it's not Shakespeare, I could do a book group or a readers group. Last year, I started visiting a women's prison occasionally, And what we do there is we'll just read short stories or poems by a certain writer. And I go and we'll spend 2 hours doing it, just looking at the writer and what she, it had all been women writers so far, what she is about, and we just have at it. We have class.
So if there's anybody who just is mind blown that this is even a thing, like that you can even do stuff in a prison, that you would even think about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone who would be just too scared to go into a prison. What would you have to say to someone is like why it's not that as bad as people would originally think?
The number one emotion or experience in prison is not fear, it's boredom. I got that from inmates. Yes, prison can be scary on occasion, but our neighborhoods can be scary on occasions. The real life in prison is boredom for years. So what the men and women, when I visit the women's prison, are looking for are things that enrich their lives. They're not out to get you. Okay, maybe one is, but that's out of 1,800 people who may be there. And that would be true outside of prison as well. So you keep your wits about you, and you don't worry about the one individual because others who want you there are going to be looking out for you. And I have never had anything that ever approached harm to myself while I was in prison. Things do happen there, there that don't happen here. I've been in a prison actually when it's been locked down, and usually the most common reason for a lockdown is they miscounted the prisoners. It wasn't somebody got hurt or, a riot. There's never been a riot in anywhere that I've ever been, while I've been there. It's not the stereotypical things we hear about. So, yes, the first time, anybody would be nervous the first time. But after a few weeks, that goes away because you come to realize the men that you're working with are men that you are in a way already familiar with because they're like those that you know at your homes and in your neighborhoods.
Thank you, Dr. Heller, for joining us on this episode of Rooted, and thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to Rooted on iTunes and SoundCloud, and remember, you can listen to Forrester Radio on 105.5 WQHU over the air in Huntington or go to forresterradio.com.